Live and uninterrupted, the Republican primary debate for New York City mayor. Sponsored by WCBS TV, WLNY TV 1055, WCBS News Radio 880, 1010 Wins, Common Cause New York, and El Diario La Prensa. Here is your moderator, Maurice Dubois.
Hello, everyone, and good evening. Tonight, we are live at the City University of New York Graduate Center in Manhattan. The Republican candidates for mayor are with us. They are here live in the CUNY TV studios, where they will answer our questions in front of a live audience.
These debates are designed to hold the candidates accountable. It's a rare opportunity for you to see and hear the major candidates side by side, unfiltered and live. This debate is part of the city's official debate program for the 2013 elections, administered by the New York City Campaign Finance Board. The CFB administers the city's landmark public matching fund program, which further strengthens the role of average New Yorkers and their small dollar contributions in city elections. The nonpartisan, objective criteria for this debate were set months in advance.
Now, two quick program notes for you. You can also see tonight's debate in Spanish on WLNY TV 1055, and you can join the debate discussion online by tweeting hashtag NYC2013. Tonight, we welcome the Republican candidates for mayor, businessman John Catsimatidis, former MTA chairman and former deputy mayor Joe Lhota, and Doe Fund founder George McDonald. And joining me to question the candidates, my colleague at WCBS TV, political reporter Marcia Kraemer, Marlene Peralta from El Diario La Prensa, and Juliet Papa of 1010 Wins Radio. And here are the ground rules. There are no opening statements. The candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question, and they will have 30 seconds for rebuttal. Our first question on this, the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. And Mr. McDonald, by a coin toss, you were randomly selected to go first. We all know that each of you supports stop and frisk. How would you, Mr. McDonald, how would you react and change your position? Would it change if your son John came home and he told you he had been stopped and he felt violated?
Well, Maurice, thank you. I'd like to thank first the sponsors of this evening's debate. And also I'd like to thank Time Warner for allowing us to have CBS back for these few minutes this evening. Maurice, the question of stop, question, and frisk is central to this campaign. I've spent the past 25 years working on behalf of people at the bottom of our economic ladder. I went to Grand Central Terminal after a woman died of malnutrition. She starved to death in the richest country, in the richest city in the world.
You have 30 seconds, Mr. McDonald. And if your son John, with all due respect, if he came to you, said he felt violated.
I understand the question, but I'd like to actually be able to answer it over the evening my own way. We have worked with African-American men for the past 25 years. I have worked to amend or correct the mass incarceration of African-American men in America. We have done that.
Sorry, sir.
I know the value of work over a handout.
That was 1 minute, sir. Thank you. Mr. Catsimatidis, how would you react? And would your position on stop and frisk change if your son John came home and told you he'd been stopped and he felt violated?
No, it wouldn't change. I do have a son named John, and I would say to him, well, what did you do to provoke it? I would say to him, were you dressed funny? Were you walking funny? Did you look funny? I would try to explain to him, but I think the priority of our city is to keep our citizens safe, not to protect criminals. So I would sit down, have a father-to-son talk with him, and say to him that we need it, we have to keep our citizens safe, and we got to keep the guns off the street.
Mr. Lhota, how would you react, and would your position change if your daughter Catherine came home, told you she felt violated by a stop?
Well, thank you, Maurice, and also thank you to the Campaign Finance Board and all the sponsors, especially the graduate school here at CUNY. If Catherine was stopped because of stop, question, and frisk, one of the first things that I would do was give her the plain English lawsuit, Terry v. Ohio, which was written by Chief Justice Earl Warren in 1968, which gave police officers all throughout the United States an opportunity based on certain levels of suspicion to stop someone and then question them, and if necessary, frisk them. Stopping alone happens with great frequency. Questioning must always happen, and frisking doesn't necessarily have to happen. It's a function of that. If all three of those things actually happen, I would then ask Catherine what exactly did happen. And if they did not follow the rules of the Supreme Court, I would actually say that we have a situation here. But the reality is, and 90% of all of the millions of stops that have happened in the city of New York have happened in compliance with the constitutional rights that have been put forward by the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Mr. Lhota.
And just let me follow up, please.
With 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Yeah, it's my son John isn't going to get stopped. That's the whole point. The high crime areas in our city are where people are being stopped. And the underlying reasons why they're being stopped are all economics. They don't have anything to do with crime. If we address the economic issues, the unemployment rate, the dropout rate, all of those things that nobody ever talks about, we have to talk about. We have to provide opportunity for our disconnected youth. There are 4 of them here tonight from our program that you can talk to about the lack of opportunity that they have had their whole lives. We have an opportunity now as a city to come together and to make investment in these communities. That's what we need.
If either of you would like to rebut, you have 30 seconds.
Look, I believe that stop, question, and frisk is a tactic. It's not a strategy. It's a tactic that should be used by police departments all around the country. But what's really important is that we have got to communicate with the communities all throughout the city exactly what police officers are allowed to do, and we have to train our police officers as exactly what they have to do, and retrain them and make sure the public understands what that training is.
Okay.
I believe we need additional training from our rookies. We just shouldn't just take them and throw them into a neighborhood that is going to require a lot of stop, question, and frisk. In addition, I'm depending on new technology to avoid. First, we have the technology that we use at our airports. And second, there's new technology coming in the future where you'll be able to tell if somebody's carrying a gun from a distance. So stop, question, and frisk is a temporary thing. We should use our metal detectors like we use in the airports, so we don't have to touch anybody.
Thank you, Mr. Catsimatidis.
Thank you.
Okay, next question from Marcia Kraemer.
Mr. Lhota, you had lymphoma about 7 years ago, and I'm wondering whether you would be able to, would feel comfortable releasing your medical records to prove that you're fit to serve in office, and if you would also be comfortable in telling us about any prescription drugs that you're on.
Absolutely, I would release, if you required it, I would absolutely release my medical reports so that you understand that I am free and clear of the lymphoma that I had 6 or 7 years ago. I don't remember exactly when it is. I think, look, if you're going to be mayor of the city of New York, you have to disclose to the people of the city of New York who you are and exactly what condition you're in. You know, the fact that I take also high blood pressure medicine and have for over 20 years done it, and it keeps it under significant control. Be more than happy to make that known. I have nothing about my life that I would find overly embarrassing. And, you know, we require lots of our public officials. We have to say a lot of what goes on in our lives and in our private lives. Some people may think it's an invasion. This is the price we pay to serve the people of the city of New York.
Mr. Catsimatidis, would you release your medical records? Are there any medical problems that you have that you'd like to tell us about? And would you also feel comfortable telling us about any prescription drugs that you currently take?
I have no problem releasing my medical records. I do have diabetes, like 1 out of 8 New Yorkers. And I think it's a horrible disease. When 1 out of 8 New Yorkers have it and nobody calls it an epidemic, that's a problem. And I believe that we have to fight hard. We have to teach our kids nutrition growing up, because I think that's going to avoid additional diabetic problems.
And what prescription drugs do you take?
Oh, I take blood pressure medicine, and I take medicine for diabetes.
Mr. McDonald.
I actually went to my doctor before, as I was deciding to run for mayor, and had a physical like I do every year. And he said that I was in vigorous shape and ready to run the city. So here I am. Yes, I would, with his permission, release my medical records. And while we're on the subject of full disclosure, We're still waiting for John Catsimatidis to disclose his tax returns, just like everybody else in this election has done. So if he's for full disclosure, let's see his tax returns.
But what about prescription drugs? Are you taking any?
Sure, I do, but I'm not going to discuss what I take now tonight.
Okay. And either of you would like to rebut?
No, it's just back to his old tricks.
Okay. All right.
But that, John says that he's a special case. He's like Mike Bloomberg. He's not going to release his taxes. I know Mike Bloomberg. Mike Bloomberg is a friend of mine. John Catsimatidis is no Mike Bloomberg.
He's certainly worth a lot more money than I am.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to move on. Marlene Peralta, next question, please.
Yes, this question is too old, but I would like to start with Mr. Catsimatidis. In the future, will New York City be able to afford pensions for its workers? And will the workers have to make contributions?
I think we have to fix the future. There is no way we can continue and start an employee working at the age of 21 for 20 years, and anybody that's 21 right now is estimated to live to be 90. You can't hire him at the age of 21. He works for 20 years, and then you pay him for an additional 50 years until he's 90. It's just the numbers don't work, and we have to fix that problem. And I would say that's one of the first things the mayor has to fix next year before new employees are being hired.
And would workers have to contribute to pensions as an option?
Well, as an option, you can go to a 401k plan like some other people have gone or companies have gone. There could be an option where you could pay them more in lieu of having a pension. So you have a choice of paying them more, having a 401k plan, or paying them less and have a traditional pension plan, but it's got to be fixed. You can't collect for 50 years.
Mr. McDonald, same question.
Yes, since the beginning of the campaign, I said that I wouldn't sign a labor contract without the city employees participating in the cost of their health care. As far as the pensions are concerned, we have early retirees who get health care. I would move them under 65 years old to Obamacare so that we could guarantee that they would have their pensions in the future before we wind up like Detroit. We have an unsustainable budget in the city of New York. For every $100 in payroll cost and salary we pay 70% in fringe costs, and that is unsustainable. We cannot continue to do that as a city. So, and actually, you know, Mr. Catsimatidis, when he bought United Refinery, an oil company in Pennsylvania, he cut their pensions in half. So I wouldn't look to him to secure your pensions if you were employees of the city of New York.
Mr. Lhota?
Yes, thank you.
I want to rebut that.
After Mr. Lhota?
It's not true.
Please, after Mr. Lhota.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're absolutely right, Marlene. Our pension system is unsustainable at the present period of time. While it's funded better than most other cities in this country, it is totally unsustainable. Right now, believe it or not, New York City employees do contribute to their pension. The question is, do they contribute enough? And the answer is no. I believe future employees, we should start moving to a defined contribution plan, similar to a 401k, and do away with the defined benefit plan. We can't do that as mayor. None of us can do that as mayor. We can go to Albany and ask for it because the governor and the state legislature grant these pensions. I will lobby Albany as vigorously as I possibly can, and I would call upon all of the county executives that surround New York who suffer the same problems of New York, where Albany gives pension sweeteners and we have to pay for it. We need to do something about this, and we need to do it soon.
30 seconds for a rebuttal, Mr. Catsimatidis.
Yes, I'm just rebutting Mr. McDonald. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
And that's we're going to leave it right there.
It's not, whatever he said was not true about our pension plan at the United Refinery.
Okay, thank you. Juliet Papa with our next question.
Okay, and this is to all, and Mr. McDonald, you can reply first. Given the chemical warfare going on in Syria, what would you do as mayor to protect New York City from a chemical and or biological attack?
Well, the first thing I do is hire a police commissioner. And I already know who that's going to be. And no, I'm not going to tell you. But I believe that the police commissioner should do a review from top to bottom of the police department, both its personnel and its policies. I feel that Mike Bloomberg and Ray Kelly have done a fantastic job. I think that we're all safer because of their service. I just want to, as mayor, continue to preserve what they've done and improve on it. And I think that we have that opportunity going forward.
Okay, Mr. Lhota.
Juliet, we have practiced, at least when I was deputy mayor in the city of New York, we had practiced for some kind of a biochemical tragedy to happen in New York. And quite honestly, it started with the creation of the Office of Emergency Management. It does require a strong police commissioner. It does require an enormous amount of coordination with the hazmat guys over at the fire department as well. And we also need to reinvigorate the mayor's Office of Emergency Management, because a chemical attack requires more than just a public safety issue. New York City needs to be fully prepared as to what should happen. We did a sarin gas exercise, and unfortunately, in the process, we noted that how many of the men of the fire department and the police department were going in unprotected, and in the example, they would have lost their lives if it was reality. Our men and women need to be prepared. We need to have water available in the event that it's contaminated. We need to have the drugs available and held in various different locations as inoculations against the chemicals. It requires all hands on deck. It requires planning and preparation.
And Mr. Catsimatidis, what would your plan be?
I believe in keeping our citizens safe. I believe that the things that are in place right now with Commissioner Kelly has the terrorist force that he has of his own. I would have a definitive plan just for chemical warfare and make sure it's implemented and it's ready to go if there is a problem.
And if you want to rebut what each other has said? Okay, next question is for all of you. I'm going to start with Mr. Lhota. Should the city get out of the business of public housing and privatize it? And are you willing to auction off each development to the highest bidder?
Maurice, thank you for that question, and it's a very, very interesting question, because traditionally you would say that I am in favor of privatization right now, and I've always been. But I'm not sure we need to do that with our NYCHA developments all throughout the city of New York. What we need to do for NYCHA is to provide them with the funding necessary so that they can do their repairs and maintain affordable housing. Look, we've had the example of what's gone on over in Peter-Stuyvesant Village where it was affordable housing and now the rates are going up. We need to make sure that we have affordable housing for the people in the city of New York. Right now, we're at the point of losing the middle class because housing is so expensive in the city of New York. I'm in favor of what Mayor Bloomberg has suggested. He didn't implement it, but he wants to be able to take any surplus properties that are at NYCHA projects and be able to rent them out or lease them out to for-profit developers who, in turn, that proceeds can come and help subsidize our affordable housing that's part of the NYCHA development. This is the direction I think we need to go in. It needs to be a hybrid. It needs to be a public-private partnership, which together we can provide the monies to continue to provide affordable housing in New York City.
Mr. Catsimatidis, same question. Should the city get out of the business of public housing and privatize it?
I don't think so at the current time. We have been looking at one of the programs of possibly having ownership by some of the residents, where you sell them the apartment at a very, very cheap rate, let's say $25,000 an apartment, $30,000 an apartment, and you give them the benefit of ownership. At that point, they will feel better about owning something, and someday they'll be able to see value from it. I also think we have to do a better job protecting our citizens in NYCHA housing. 325 NYCHA buildings account for 20% of the crime in our city. I said on January 3rd, I will assign police officers 24/7 to cover 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, because those people deserve to be safe too, and I think it's important. And ownership possibilities and keep them safe, I think it'll be a better NYCHA project.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McDonald, should the city get out of the business of public housing and private
I don't
housing?
believe that we should get out of the business. I think that we ought to leverage the public housing that we have so that we can use air rights, for example, to be able to raise some funds to subsidize the repairs that we need on our public housing. But we also need to look at those 40 to 50,000 underutilized apartments in NYCHA, where they're large apartments and they're down to one single person. And we can use them to house families. We have the largest number of homeless families in our shelter system. And this is a way to right-size the housing stock. I also have endorsed the Housing First plan to build 150,000 units over to build and preserve over 150,000 units of affordable housing over the next 8 years. I also have a plan to build 75,000 efficiency apartments, 275 square feet, kitchen and a bathroom, just like the Doe Fund did on 117th Street for $500 a month.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Rebuttal, Mr. Lhota?
Yes, Maurice. I agree that we need to do something about crime in our housing developments. It's very, very important. But the proposal that was just put forward, that we would put one officer in every building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, will take 3,000 officers off the street. I want to know how we're going to pay for 3,000 additional officers, because those are officers who are doing things right now. Now we're going to plant them inside each and every one of the housing developments 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The cost of that is extraordinary, and we need to understand where the funding is going to come for that.
Mr. Catsimatidis, 30 seconds.
I'm disappointed in his mathematics. 325 buildings times approximately 4 officers per building is about 1,200. Thank you.
One more thing on the same topic, gentlemen. The mayor said he wants to. You want to go ahead? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sure. The reality is, in dealing with that, there are more than 325 individual buildings, but be that as it may,
there's 325 buildings that account for 20% of the problem.
So we're going to give some people police protection and not others. That's not fair. What you need to understand, and you're going to need more than 4 because of vacations and because of the fact they only work 5 days a week and 7 days a week. I'm sorry, John, it's closer to 2,000 to 2,400. I was the budget director of the city of New York. I used to do this day in and day out. Don't make up numbers.
I don't make up numbers. I know what I'm talking about. Okay?
Why are you so angry?
I'm not.
All evidence to the contrary.
Mr. McDonald, you've got a rebuttal.
Just 30 seconds, because I believe that, again, they're both missing the point, which is if we do what we can do as a city, what we should do as a city, for these high crime precincts, the places where the highest numbers of stop and frisks are, there are about 10 of them in our city, that if we invest in the youth, the disconnected youth, in those areas, if we make investment in education for those areas, if we make investment in trade schools, if we do the things that help lift the people up, we won't have to be worrying about how many police we have there. We will have a beehive of economic activity.
Thank you, sir.
That's what we should be concentrating on.
One more thing, follow up here, 30 seconds on this one. Mayor Bloomberg suggested fingerprint technology to have people come and go, so they're authorized to come and go, so we know who they are. There was a big uproar this past week. Do you support it or are you against it? Mr. Lhota.
Mr. Lhota. I think the mayor's choice of words and the mayor's choice of technology was not the correct one. We have to find a way to keep the doors at all of our housing developments locked. And the issue he was addressing was, what can we do to make sure that the doors stay locked? So he suggested using fingerprints or palm prints to do it. There have got to be other ways to do it because, quite honestly, the doors can be broken even under that approach. We need to be able to use technology to help the people who feel that the buildings that they're living in are unsafe because people are walking in those buildings and not knowing harm. So direct answer to your question, I don't think it's going to be fingerprints. It leaves the impression because fingerprints are directly related to criminal activity. There are other ways in which you can do it using biometrics just the same way without having it as invasive as being a fingerprint.
Mr. Catsimatidis, fingerprints or not? Good idea, bad idea?
Well, you know, I already stated how I'd like to keep our people protected in those buildings. I thought that Mayor Bloomberg looked at it in a different way. If somebody signs up and is qualified for the apartment under the amount of earnings they have, what's happened is if that person dies or goes away or leaves, usually the manager sometimes just sells that apartment for $10,000 to somebody else, which is wrong. We need to keep qualified people in those buildings, and I thought that when you sign the lease, you get fingerprinted that you're the proper owner of that lease.
Thank you, Mr. Catsimatidis.
Versus somebody else.
Mr. McDonald, fingerprints are not good idea, bad idea in public housing.
I think what the mayor was looking for was to have people be safe. And I think that the idea that he had came from his own company, Bloomberg, which employees have to use their fingerprints to get into. Now, I would take a different approach as mayor. I would have empathy for the people, and they would know it, because I have spent the last 25 years of my life helping people who live in NYCHA housing, their sons and daughters, and sometimes their husbands or fathers. We need to help the people at the bottom of our economic ladder start to climb up. And we need to do that with full employment. Full employment is 94, 95%. Everybody who wants a job can get a job. I think that that's the answer to the security for our city.
Thank you, sir. Marcia, Kraemer.
All right, the next question is going to go to all of you, but we're going to start with Mr. Catsimatidis. Mr. Catsimatidis, Christine Quinn has said that if she were elected mayor, one of her priorities will be to have the city distribute bigger and better condoms. There have been a number of complaints that the condoms distributed by the city are not big enough or strong enough. I wonder if you agree and if you would make it a priority.
Well,
it's them.
I think I disagree with Christine Quinn as far as distributing condoms to underage kids without their parents' permission. I think there might be an age that you can do it at, maybe at 16 and above. But to distribute condoms to kids that are 12 years old...
The city does it now.
Huh?
The city does it now.
I know, and I think it's wrong. And I think we should buy the strongest condoms we can get.
Mr. McDonald.
Mr. McDonald, you're next.
Whatever condoms we use, I want them made in the city of New York. I want to use the purchasing power of the city of New York to create jobs, all kinds of jobs. These are high-tech jobs. They have to be safe.
Mr. Lhota.
I don't agree with Christine Quinn. You want to see the ultimate in pandering? It's exactly what Christine Quinn did. We are distributing condoms. We will continue to distribute condoms, whether we have parental choice or not. The city's doing it already. Quite honestly, it's the worst type of pandering I've possibly seen. I agree with George. If we can, let's make them here. Let's put people to work in New York.
I have...
You want to rebut that?
I do, because he brought up pandering, okay? So it's not the worst kind of pandering. The worst kind of pandering you see on your televisions at home, tax the rich. That's dividing the city of New York. It's pandering for something that the candidate, Bill de Blasio, who's suggesting it, knows he cannot do. But yet, it's the great divide in our city. We can't do that, and we can't pander to the taxpayers.
Mr. Catsimatidis?
No rebuttal.
Okay. We'll leave it right there. Next question, Marlene.
Yes, this question is also to all, and I'm going to start with Mr. McDonald. Mayor Bloomberg has tried to minimize car traffic in Manhattan. Would you reopen Broadway in Times Square and Herald Square to cars? Why or why not?
I'm not in favor of opening any of the streets that have been closed to cars now. I've endorsed the Gridlock Sam's Fair Toll program, where we would actually congestion price the bridges. I believe the city ought to, the mayor ought to have control over those things that the MTA, the bridges, and the transit authority. But I believe that treating Staten Island, the Verrazano Bridge, like it's Staten Island's essential business district and having a $15 toll is ludicrous. Tolling the East River bridges are going to throw off $1 billion or more that we can then invest in improving mass transit in the city of New York to get people to use mass transit more and to use bicycles more and to use cars less.
Thank you. Mr. Lhota?
Thank you, Marlene. I do not believe that initially, right out of the box, that I would open up those streets again. I want to evaluate it, but I also want to evaluate it from a citywide point of view. One of the things that was missing when these roads were closed in Times Square, as well as in front of Herald Square in front of Macy's. Macy's will tell you they didn't have a whole lot of conversation with the city of New York. Nobody in the city of New York had any idea of what the vision was on the part of the mayor and his transportation commissioner. What we need to do in the city of New York is explain what needs to happen with our roads, making sure that we enhance mobility, not decrease mobility, make sure traffic moves, why lights aren't in sync. There are lots of things that we have to focus on to mitigate the traffic problems in New York. As we're doing that evaluation, if it's determined that they need to be open, I would be in favor of it. But the reality is right now, you can't do it without having a discussion with the people and not having discussion with all of the communities that are impacted by this.
Mr. Catsimatidis?
I don't believe we should punish the outer boroughs any more than they're being punished. I think the outer boroughs should have access to all our boroughs without being forced to pay. Staten Island has been punished with highest tolls in the land. As far as you can go from Florida to Delaware for $16. Then to go the last 10 miles, you have to pay another $15.
Mr. Catsimatidis, the question is yes, it's opening Times Square or Herald Square.
Well, I know it was also congestion pricing, which I'm answering.
I brought that up.
As congestion pricing, I don't.
No.
As far as the Times Square, I want to do a study, and I want to meet with the community and see how they feel about it. But I don't agree when traffic goes down 7th Avenue or goes down Broadway or any of those areas, that you go down in one lane. It doesn't make any common sense. You know, if you have an emergency situation and you want the fire engines to get through, you want the police cars to get through, or if one of our grandmothers or grandfathers is in an ambulance, you can't clog up our streets.
Thank you, Mr. Catsimatidis. Okay.
John brings up that it's unsafe every time that we have this discussion, but the truth of the matter is that the mayor and the city have acted responsible, and there's no place that an ambulance or a fire truck can't get by.
We're going to move on here, Mr. McDonald. Okay, next question, Juliet.
Okay, and to all of you, many New York parents have kept their children home rather than let them take the state's standardized tests. As mayor, would you ask the Department of Education to opt out of state testing so that teachers aren't teaching to the test? And Mr. Lhota, we'll go to you first.
No, I would not ask the Department of Education to stop testing. What we need to do is make sure that our teachers are properly trained. We jumped into the testing this year way too fast. Our teachers didn't know what the curriculum was going to be, had no idea what was going to be tested. So in a sense, they were flying blind. We should never have that situation. We shouldn't put our children in this case in that situation, or our teachers, or our parents. I understand the frustration of the parents, but what's really important at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, that our kids learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. That core that is really important. To me, that's what I'll make sure the chancellor works on, in making sure that we have a curriculum that makes our children prepared for the economy and the 21st century. Testing is required. I was tested as a kid. All of us were probably tested as kids. There's nothing wrong with tests. But we just have to make sure we know what the curriculum is, the teachers are properly prepared, so that the children can be properly educated.
Okay, Mr. Catsimatidis.
Testing is not going away. The idea is we should have the proper tests. I've been shown by some teachers that I know tests that just don't make sense. And we're teaching to the tests that don't make sense, instead of just teaching them the right curricula, the right reading, writing, and arithmetic. And we should not teach the tests. We should teach to teach. Thank you.
Mr. McDonald.
We're moving to the Common Core standards, and I believe that, well, as mayor, I'm definitely going to appoint somebody to head the Department of Education who has teaching experience. I believe that teachers ought to be involved in the development of the curriculum, in the Common Core curriculum, and I believe that it ought to be critical thinking, not just teaching to a test. So we should also have more charter schools, longer school days, longer weeks, longer school years. I have a program called K2C, which starts a savings account for students in kindergarten when they register, and we put $50 in it, and we start saving money over the years, and then when they're ready for college, not all of them are going to go to college, but some of them will go to a community college or a vocational school or technical school, and they'll have the money to do it. And we can also use matching philanthropic funds to invest in the K-to-C program.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to move on to our lightning round. You know how this works. I give you a question. You give me a 1, 2, 3-word answer. First thing that comes to mind. We're going to start with Mr. Catsimatidis. As mayor, would you officiate a same-sex marriage?
If I know the people, yes, I would.
Mr. McDonald.
The only person I'm marrying is my wife, Harriet, who's here tonight.
Would you officiate at a marriage?
I'm not going to officiate at any marriage, and the only marriage that's going to take place at Gracie Mansion is my wife and I getting remarried.
Okay, we got it. Mr. Lhota?
I actually agree that I'm not going to spend my time marrying people or other responsibilities, but I'll marry whoever can legally be married in New York. Infrequently will I do it. Doesn't matter what their preference is.
Okay. Mr. McDonald, should there be more or fewer red light cameras in our city?
There should be more red light cameras in our city. There should be more speed cameras by schools.
Okay. Mr. Lhota?
There should be more, not many more, but there should be more.
Mr. Catsimatidis?
They should be more as far as keeping our streets safe and our kids safe, but not used as a penalty just to charge fines.
Okay. Mr. Catsimatidis, did you vote in the last presidential election, and if so, for whom?
Yes, I voted for Mitt Romney.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes, I voted for Mitt Romney.
And Mr. Lhota?
Yes, I voted for Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan.
Mr. McDonald, are you willing to serve for $1 a year like Mayor Bloomberg?
No.
Mr. Lhota?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Catsimatidis?
Less. I'm 99 cents because I was a grocer.
And Mr. Lhota, if elected, will you tell us where you'll be on weekends, unlike Mayor Bloomberg?
Yes, I will. I will put out a public schedule. You'll know where I am, and you'll know how quickly I can get back.
Okay. Mr. Catsimatidis, will you tell us where you're going on weekends?
Absolutely. I'm a workaholic. I'm used to working 24/7, and I'll be around 24/7.
Okay. And Mr. McDonald?
I will be on weekends, rarely 20 minutes away from New York City in Bayshore, New York, at Raphael Gustavino's home.
We'll take that as a yes.
That we saved from being demolished.
Okay. Moving on here. We are going to go to Mr. Let's see, where did I leave off there? Who was the last one? We'll go to Mr. Lhota for this one. Reports today that the NYPD has secretly labeled entire mosques as terrorism organizations, allowing officers to use informants to secretly record sermons and to spy on them. Is that going to be your policy?
My policy is going to be exactly what the NYPD has been following. There is an agreement with the federal courts called the Handshoe Agreement. And inside that Handshoe Agreement, it allows police officers and the NYPD to do certain types of surveillance, whether it's for criminal-related purposes or terrorism-related purposes. Nothing in that article today presented itself as something that the NYPD is doing in violation of federal law, federal regulations, or the courts. This is nothing more than an article by some reporters who are being ginned up by people who do not know the law and do not understand it. I encourage Commissioner Kelly and Mayor Bloomberg to publicly state what they're doing and how they're doing it in compliance with the Handshoe Agreement. They don't have to detail information that's confidential, but they need to make everyone in New York aware that they're doing everything in accordance with the federal law and are not violating our Constitution.
Mr. Catsimatidis.
I would expect my police commissioner to abide by the law, and the federal law says that. I expect them to abide by it.
Mr. McDonald.
I look forward to reading more about it. You know, people of all faiths died after 9/11, but the mosque that certain people tried to put close to the World Trade Center, or the Freedom Tower now, you know, it wasn't very transparent, and the funding, where it was coming from, was questionable. So I would want to know more.
Okay. Marcia, Kraemer?
Okay, this next question is to all of you, but we're going to start with Mr. McDonald. This is a jobs question. The new mayor of Los Angeles says that he wants to poach New York City's movie jobs. Now, that's 130,000 jobs a year, and it's contributed over $80 billion to the city's economy over the last decade. How would you keep the movie industry and TV jobs here, and be specific?
Well, I would be specific because this is New York City and not Los Angeles. So people want to live and work here and not Los Angeles. I mean, it's as simple as that, or they'd be in Los Angeles because that's where the movie business started.
Well, what would you do to keep them here?
Well, you know, I don't know that it's necessary to actually do anything. The mayor, because the mayor of Los Angeles suggests that he's going to try to poach an industry from us, doesn't mean that people will move to Los Angeles. It's, you know, I'm for full employment and using the resources of the city to create jobs. But I don't know that I want to respond to everybody who makes it. Look at the governor of New Jersey or the mayor of Jersey City or any of these places. We can be responding to people all day long.
Okay, Mr. Catsimatidis, how about you? What would you do, specifically, what would you do to keep this very lucrative business here in New York?
Well, I believe in keeping our movie business in New York. The quality of life for everybody that works in that industry is better in New York. I would always point that out. And I would look to see if there was a competitive offer and just look at it, and I would make a decision. And you can't make a decision up front like this.
Mr. Lhota, same question.
The absurdity of the Los Angeles mayor saying he wants to take movies from New York, I thought Hollywood and Los Angeles was the headquarters for movies. But the reason why it's not is New York City and New York State went out of its way to provide tax credits, to be able to build sound stages. We have 2 beautiful sound stages in Brooklyn. We have one at Chelsea Pier. The number of shows that are made in New York, especially television shows, exceeds any other city in the country. North Carolina started a movie business. We prevented them from taking our business away. Connecticut's tried to take some of our business away with tax credits. We've enhanced our tax credits. I'll make sure they stay in place. I'll make sure that a level of full employment as much as we can for our actors and actresses, as well as all of the technical people, the hundreds of thousands of technical people who are involved in making shows here in New York.
Our next question is from Marlene Peralta.
Yes, this is for all, but we start with Mr. Catsimatidis. Mayor Koch has the Queensboro Bridge. Mayor LaGuardia has the airport. What would you name for Mayor Bloomberg, and what would you do it if he was still alive?
Mayor Bloomberg has served our city well for 12 years. Mayor Koch's expression.
What would you name for
Mayor Koch's expression was, if you agree with 70% of what a mayor does, you're in pretty good shape. I would ask him what he would like to be named after him. He's worked hard. He spent a lot of money in the city. I think he should be asked.
And while he was still alive, would you do it?
Yes, because a person will appreciate it while he's alive.
Mr. Lhota.
I would also ask the mayor what he'd be interested in, but I'm an extremely superstitious person. I don't believe anything should be named for someone while they're alive. You always run the risk when you do something like that. It's critical that you name whatever it is he would like, whether it's a school or another bridge or a tunnel like was named for you, Carrie. There are numerous things that we can do. Whatever pleases him would be fine with me.
Mr. McDonald.
I already know what I'm going to name after Mayor Bloomberg, and it's called Bloomberg Seaport City. And not only am I going to name it after him, I'm going to get his help to build it.
Where will it be?
Well, it would be where Seaport City is called for now, on the east side of Manhattan, on the Lower East Side, as a storm protection and revenue generating, as called for in the mayor's 250 points of resiliency.
Okay, thank you. Juliet Papa.
All right, so this kind of goes right into our next question. The city continues to develop and rebuild waterfront areas. Now, given what happened with Superstorm Sandy, is that a good idea? So, Mr. Lhota, why don't you answer that?
Sure, I think building up the waterfront in New York is a very good idea, but knowing what can happen because of what Mother Nature can do to us, we've got to change our architecture approach. We've got to change the rules of the buildings department. The fact that they require that there be energy and fuel furnaces and all of that in the basement is a big mistake. places along the water, it should be a lot higher. We're rebuilding the waterfront in Williamsburg. The mayor's proposal for Seaport City, which will now be known as Bloomberg Land, which I think is a very perfect idea, because if you saw what happened over in Battery Park City had not one stitch of water because how it was made, and it was made with the point in mind of what would happen if the water rises up. So those buildings along Battery Park City were not in any way, shape, or form affected. However, because it was built up as high as it is, we ended up with 93 million gallons of water in the U-Carry Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. So we need to make sure that whatever we do to mitigate any of these problems. It's very possible we could have another storm as ferocious this year. We need to get prepared. A whole year has gone by, and nothing real has happened, and we could be destroyed again.
And Mr. Bloomberg City, Mr. McDonald, how would you build that?
Well, first of all, I think that we need a mayor that believes in climate change, and my opponent, John Catsimatidis, doesn't. So I think we should begin there.
Can I rebut that?
Not yet.
Just a moment.
But I've never spoken in the first place.
I still have time. My friend the governor says that we have a 100-year storm every 2 years, and I think that that's a good way to plan. The mayor's resiliency plan with 250 points is something that I would implement, and there are a lot of other good ideas. But we have to have a communication system that's an early warning for the people that live in these areas that are affected, that we now know are in danger in Staten Island and the Rockaways and so on. An early communications network.
Quick rebuttal, Mr. Catsimatidis.
Do you want me to start from the beginning?
You've got 30 seconds, wherever you want.
Well, I never talked about my original thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Still has a question.
Sorry about that.
I believe Sandy Storm was a game changer. I've had a press conference a couple weeks ago, and I've called on our terminal waste station on 91st Street to be relooked at, because Sandy was a game changer. If Sandy came back and that terminal station was there, it'd be one of the biggest environmental problems that anybody has ever seen. In addition, I believe we should develop our waterfront. New York City has the greatest waterfront of any of our cities in America. We have so much to give, and I believe we should develop it, and it's a plus, plus, plus for our city. Okay. Now you want me to get the rebuttal on everybody talks about environment, and just because I'm in the energy business, people feel that I'm against it, which is 110% wrong. Again, not knowing what they're talking about. And what it is, we are building the biggest biodiesel facility in Brooklyn. We saved 300 jobs, a couple of hundred jobs that went bankrupt last year. We bought it, and the biggest biodiesel recycle plant in the country. In addition, 10 years ago, we put generators in the East River.
We got to go, Mr. Catsimatidis.
Well, we built generators in the East River to generate electricity for our store on Roosevelt Island.
Thank you. Next question is for all of you. Going to start with Mr. McDonald. A lot of people have called the mayor Nanny Bloomberg for his health initiatives. What's going to be your signature health initiative in the city?
Well, as I said many times in this campaign, I believe what Edmund Burke said, to preserve and improve. I am thankful to Mayor Bloomberg for increasing my lifespan by 3 years and the rest of the people in the city of New York. He is the greatest public health mayor in the history of America. It's hard to know how you can top that. I would look to work hard at trying to overcome this obesity challenge, which is now a disease. And I did change my position on the whether or not we should have these large sodas. I don't believe that we should, and I believe that I would work with the city council to try to get a law. Look, the city council passes laws about everything, so I think that we should talk to them about this.
Mr. Lhota, what's going to be your big signature health initiative?
Well, I also agree that Mayor Bloomberg has done extraordinary things in making sure that we live longer. I don't agree with the soda ban at all. I would continue the lawsuit to make sure that it doesn't happen. I believe the city of New York should educate people about why sugared soda is bad for you, and people should make their own mind up. Government shouldn't tell us what to do. Government should educate us, and then we make up our own mind. The initiatives that I would focus on as mayor, number one, I want to find a way to eradicate asthma in the city of New York. Asthma is at epic proportions at the current time. It's in all 5 boroughs. It's affecting both people of all classes, but most notably in the lower and moderate income class as well. I also want to reinstall physical education in all schools and at all ages. I want to encourage everyone to take advantage of our parks, to take advantage of our new bike lanes all around the city of New York, including in the outer boroughs. I want people to go outside. I want people to live longer because they're working out. I want that to begin in kindergarten all the way up through the 12th grade and continue on for the rest of their life. I'd like to be known as the mayor that kept everybody outside having fun.
Mr. Catsimatidis, your big health initiative.
I believe that Mayor Bloomberg meant well by what he proposed with the soda ban and the 32-ounce soda. Like I've stated before, I believe we should do that through education. Kids in the 7th grade or 8th grade, nutrition should be on the subject line, and they should be taught how to eat better and live longer and avoid diseases. In addition, that I too believe that we should have more gym courses. Right now, the kids are specializing in thumb games, playing with electronic toys instead of being in the gym, instead of being out in the parks playing ball. And we have to get our kids in better shape so they, the object is to live longer.
For a final question, gentlemen, we have 20 seconds apiece. I'd like each of you, beginning with Mr. Lhota, if you can, say something nice about each of your opponents here tonight.
Oh, I can say something nice about each of my opponents. I've got to meet both of their families. Both of these gentlemen have wonderful families, wonderful wives. I got to meet Emma, George's granddaughter, at the last debate. She's a wonderful little girl. I think it's a sign of a person when they have, a good sign for a person, when they have a great wife and a great family, and both of them do.
Mr. Catsimatidis.
Joe knows I like him a great deal. I mean, we've had dinner together with the family. And no, I really do. I mean, Joe, I hope you really feel that way, because I really like you a great deal. We might have disagreements, but that's politics. And George, I've always said I'm a friend of yours, and the first time you disagreed with me, then you agreed with me, and maybe you'll disagree with me. But okay. I guess that's George.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald, 20 seconds for you.
John thinks that we're friends because he charged me 11% interest on a $1 million mortgage for 9 years. So, we're friends because I paid him. But on the other hand, John has a very nice family and a very nice wife and 2 children. And I've come to know Joe and his wife and his daughter through this campaign. We were actually friends before this election, and we're friends now.
Gentlemen, thank you.
And I think he's just a terrific guy.
Thank you so much. All right. We're going to give each of you now 1 minute for a closing statement. The order was determined by a random drawing, and Mr. Catsimatidis, you go first.
I grew up in New York City in the poor side of town. I owe New York City for everything I have. I made a lot of money. I don't hide from it. I have a great family. I have great kids. I owe everything to New York. I just want to give back. I am the only one running that's created tens of thousands of jobs. I want to create hundreds of thousands of jobs for New York City. I want to build on New York. I want to take the platform that Mayor Bloomberg has created and build on top of it and make it an even better city. I love New York. I will work hard to make it an even better city. Jobs, a better education system, keeping our city safe. I will work hard to make sure we don't give the streets back to the hoodlums. And my #1 priority the day I take office, on January 3rd, I will freeze all taxes that the mayor is responsible for until we determine where the budget really is.
Thank you. Mr. Lhota, closing statement.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for hosting this debate. My name is Joe Lhota. I was born in the Bronx. My dad was a New York City cop. His father was a New York City fireman. My other grandfather was a New York City taxi cab driver. New York City has been in my blood right from the very, very beginning. But this election is not about the past. It's about the future and who has a plan and the vision to make sure that the city continues to move forward. As mayor, I will make sure that our economy continues to diversify and the private sector continues to be able to create jobs. As mayor, I'll also reform our public school system to make sure that our children are prepared for the 21st century. And as mayor, I will make sure that our quality of life continues to be enhanced by lowering the cost of living in New York, as well as making sure that our police department continues to not just keep crime where it is now, but continues to reduce it. Look, I want New York City as a place where we can live, where we can work, where we can have fun, but most importantly, a place where we can raise our family. I'm running for mayor because I believe I have the vision, I have the principles, and I have the experience to get the job done. My name is Joe Lhota. I'm running for mayor in New York. I'd like your support on primary day, September 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. McDonald, 1 minute for your closing statement.
25 years ago, when I went to Grand Central Terminal to help the homeless folks who were living there, I didn't know why they were there. But I found a solution. I found that they wanted to work, and I put them to work. And over these past 25 years, we've done $750 million in revenue, and I put $250 million into the pockets of these men and women who lifted themselves up and followed my leadership. I will do that as mayor of the city of New York. We have a clear choice in this election between what you see on TV, tax the rich, which is the handout society, and work, which is the hand up. That's the choice that we have. It's a clear choice to me, and I hope it is to you. My name is George McDonald. I'd like your vote on September the 10th, and I want to be the next mayor of the city of New York. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all, gentlemen, for a spirited debate tonight. That concludes tonight's debate. We want to remind you that the primary election is on September 10th. We also want to thank the folks here at the City University of New York Graduate Center TV studios for hosting us this evening. We thank you at home for watching tonight. Don't forget, if there's a Democratic primary runoff, we will have that debate for you on September 24th right here on CBS 2. I'm Maurice Dubois. Have a great night. We'll see you tonight on the news at 11.
Through its NYC Votes programs, the Campaign Finance Board connects New Yorkers with the information they need to be informed, engaged voters. Along with these debates, the CFB prints the city's official nonpartisan New York City Voter Guide, produces a video voter guide, and has introduced a new mobile platform, nycvotes.org, which makes election and candidate information available right at your fingertips.